This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and this episode is brought to you by Silna Health. That's S-I-L-N-A, the premium front-end RCM company that leverages technology with a team of onshore insurance experts to handle benefit checks, eligibility checks, and prior authorizations. Finally, a vendor that you can trust, like a full-time employee that scales with your business. Just mention the Profiles in Leadership podcast to receive a free trial. Today, our guest is Neil Trickett, who is a physical therapist and private practice marketing expert. Neil built a seven-figure PT practice with his wife, Amy, in which he transitioned out of in 2010. He then founded Practice Promotions and has built that to be one of the largest multi-seven-figure marketing agencies in North America, specializing in rehabilitation. Neil's passion is for helping practice owners scale their business by leveling up their marketing systems and websites. Neil's company, Practice Promotions, currently services over 1,200 clinic locations across the U.S. and Canada. So, Neil, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
So why don't you just start with a little context? Tell us a little bit about, I believe you're in Florida, but where you went to PT school and how you started your private practice, and just give us a little summary of your journey to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'm an immigrant. I'm from the UK. Came to the States here in 1988. So I went to
Okay.
high school in Florida, around Fort Lauderdale area, and then went to Florida International University in Miami. And I didn't know what the heck I wanted to get into, but my high
Yeah.
school guidance counselor says, "Hey, have you, like I said, there's something in the medical field, I like medicine." She's like, "Have you checked out physical therapy?" I was like, "No." So I went and volunteered at a PT place and got interested in that. And then I went down to Florida International University in Miami for 5 years and graduated with a physical therapy degree. And then worked in different acute care, inpatient, outpatient. Got really interested in osteopathy. Got connected with a clinic that they did a lot of osteopathic care too. And so then I went to the Canadian College of Osteopathy for a little while in Toronto, Canada, and then incorporated that into our practice. So I met my wife through my best friend, who I went to PT school with, and she's a PT also. So we're the dynamic duo there, and we met up. And after we got married, we decided to relocate a little bit to Albany, New York, check that out for a while, where she's from, and then realized the winters were too cold. So came
Yeah.
back to Florida, and then from there we opened up our own practice because we said, "Hey, we see other people doing this. Why can't we do this?" Right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
started up our practice. Yeah.
So what happened to the accent? I don't even hear any
Uh,
English accent there.
yeah, it pops out when I'm with family, but I guess so many years of being, in the Yankee culture,
Yeah.
got absorbed.
Okay, so you get back to Florida, you decide to start a private practice. I would assume you started with one clinic
Mhm.
and grew it. So tell us a little bit about that journey. Started with one, and how many did you get to?
Yeah, so we just stayed with one, but we grew different. We moved different size locations, so we got bigger and moved into different location as we grew there. So the thing that I remember starting up was thinking, hey, I can just be put my shingle up there, the lettering on the window, and we're going to start
Yeah.
getting a bunch of patients in. I'll get to know some of the doctors in the building, and we should be good to go. But then quickly realized like you got to start marketing your business. And I really didn't know much of what we were doing in business at that time. We were great PTs, but really didn't know much on the business side. But over the years, we got with different consultant groups, and I'm a big believer in coaching. I know you're a great coach. But that's such a key thing that to level up yourself. We got with some different coaches over the time, got better at business. and then scaled our practice up with multiple providers there, and got into a bigger facility and built that up. And then 2010, we wanted to change from Florida, and I decided, hey, I could get into marketing here because we had people asking us how we were doing our marketing, and it kind of planted the seed that a lot more people needed our help on that side of things.
Yeah, interesting. So, what part of Florida was the practice in?
Florida, it was in Boynton Beach, which is near West Palm on the east
Okay.
coast. Yeah.
Okay. So you sell your practice, you get out of it, and then did you move out of Florida, did you say, or did you stay in Florida?
We stayed in Florida for about a year and a half, and then we moved to Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
From Yeah, so we started up practice promotions in Florida, um, and at that time it was funny because we just did direct mail marketing because that's what
Okay.
we were doing a lot of, and that was before the days of Facebook and Instagram
Yeah.
and the other digital stuff.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Okay. So now you're still in Virginia, or did you move back to Florida again?
No, we're in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, tell us a little bit about now you're a marketing expert. So, it's interesting because we all start out as PTs and then we morph into other things. Usually, I don't think of PTs and marketing expert in the same sentence. So, how does a PT like you become a marketing expert?
Lots of study,
Yeah, okay.
study, trial, talking to people, figuring things out. I've had a pleasure of working with, gosh, I mean, must be almost 1,000 practice owners over the years, and I learned a lot from them in their practice. And obviously, marketing is a very dynamic, changing world. We all know how fast the digital world changes, so it's
Yeah.
keeping up with that. Being with different groups that are out there too. So obviously, there's different agency groups, there's different digital marketing gurus and stuff that I follow. So really learning what's the trends and the latest things that are happening in the industry, bringing that back to what are the needs within a PT clinic, because they're a little bit different than you would for say e-commerce or even some other types of industries. There's that
Yeah.
unique flavor of what we do in PT. So having that background has really helped me understand what the needs are in the clinic, but then also understanding how you can apply a lot of the latest best practices to what we do in the clinic.
So, you referenced it a little bit in your opening, but you said you needed to get to know and the physicians in the area. So, back in the day and in my time too, that was kind of what the most emphasis was you built relationship with physicians and you lived off those referrals. And then I think it's safe to say that then we went through a stage of getting a physician was like impossible, so that was a little harder to do. So, what do you counsel your clients with now? Are you helping them try and build relationships with physicians, or have you gone just to the general public as far as your marketing money and effort?
Yeah, that has shifted so much over the years. When we were starting about 14, 15 years ago, it was heavy on physician referrals. And you needed to have very good physician networks, marketing to doctors, but also being able to market to your patient list and be able to bring patients back in, word of mouth referrals, all those kind of things. And then lo and behold, we have social media, the internet, and all those great things that started to come along. And it's pivoted a lot. So the physician relationship is still a critical part of running your practice, but the clinics that we see that are super successful are the ones that have really embraced direct to consumer marketing. And the businesses that get into that position where they have over 50% of their new patients coming in as word of mouth, direct marketing coming in, and when they get to only about like 10 or 15% of their business as referrals, they get into a real power curve. They're really able to grow their clinic quite quickly. So I would say that while physician relationship building is still an integral part of what we do in the clinics today, it's certainly become a lot less than it was in the past.
Yeah, and I would even make the argument that it seems like it's coming back a little bit too. I have a few clients that have really emphasized that, again, back to, building those relationships with physicians and have found success with that. So I think it's interesting that, as in anything, we go through these cycles where things change and then maybe they come back. But so tell me a little bit about if you're emphasizing more of the direct to public, what are we talking? Social media, Instagram, Just tell us about, if I come to you as a new client and say, hey, I need some help with marketing, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah, I think the thing to understand in today's world is there's not just one thing that's going to work. You have to realize that people's attention is everywhere. People are on all kinds of different social media networks. They're doing their research on different channels, doing different searches, looking at reviews online. So there's no one single thing that's going to be the magic bullet. And I think in practice, if you're always looking for the magic bullet, you kind of just start chasing your tail. What you really need is a comprehensive strategy, and that's what we help our clients really look at. So the key thing is, first off, is how can you make your clinic more discoverable online, right? And so that's how can you get more visible in the search engines, especially Google. If you can rank at the top of Google, that's key, especially in the map section, the local section there. So we do a lot of work with helping our clients rank up there, leveraging Google Ads to be at the very top of Google. And so you can get in front of people that are doing very, normal searches for physical therapists in the area, but also the people that are searching by condition. There's a lot of people that are Googling for free help, right? So how can I help my back, sprain my knee? What can I do? My shoulders, I might have a rotator cuff. So if you can start to, have your website pull up for those kind of searches, you're going to get in front of people that weren't even thinking about physical therapy before. And now you're introducing them to who you are and what you can do to help them. So we do a lot of that for our clients from the digital aspect is the online discoverability, and then we help them with what we call prospect to patient conversion. So the website is really a big hub of your marketing efforts. And if your website is not doing its job of really converting people from visitors into people booking appointments, then you're losing a lot of people at the bottom. And so we really look at with technology and with data, being able to help people dial in their conversions. So for on average, like in the space, industry average is about 2% of the people who actually come to your website are actually going to turn into an appointment.
Hmm.
And what we do is we actually, again, modify the visuals, the way that people interact, and we can usually get like over 8% conversion. So that could be a substantial increase in new patients coming just because your website's doing a better job of converting people to booked
Yeah.
appointments.
Interesting. So if I'm thinking the comprehensive approach, so you start out by saying like Google Ads. So that's something that you help your clients design an ad that you feel is catchy and appropriate and so on, and then I pay Google for that time for that ad, so to speak.
Mhm.
Is that a big spend for a private practice PT, or is it pretty reasonable?
Yeah, it's very reasonable. When
Okay.
it becomes a big spend, we see this all the time, is that people try to do it themselves. And so Google has it in a way where you can set up things and do it yourself and do a lot of Google suggestions. But Google suggestions aren't necessarily the best thing for a PT clinic. For example, they might have you opt into certain networks, and sometimes you'll get your ads shown on gaming networks, and that's not really like the best audience for you
Yeah.
when you have a 10-year-old kid seeing your ad. That's just a waste of money, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into the structure, maintaining the way that ads are. So it's really good to use an outside professional to help you do that. But when it comes to spend, it's not about what you spend, it's what you actually spend per patient. So the acquisition cost is what we look at there. And if you can get a patient in the door for like $50 or less, that's really good, right? And Google Ads is able to help clinics do that.
Interesting. So, in private practice PTs that are trying to build a business, time is always the big, how do I have time to do this or do that? And you do see a lot of people themselves trying to build their brand on social media, on Instagram or whatever, where they actually come on and send out videos themselves. Now, that takes time. That
Mhm.
takes some skill of editing and being consistent. And so, do you think that is effective as well, or do you think more of the Google Ads approach is a better way to go?
It's a very integrated approach. So what's key, what we see the most successful, our most successful clients, like that top 10%, what they do really well is that content marketing for within the clinic. So they're really good about getting the stories from patients, the transformation stories, pictures, video, visuals, And then they're able to work with, say, us, for example, to do the technical stuff, right? Which takes, you don't need to be figuring out how to do SEO or how to do Google Ads. Like, use somebody to do that. What you really need to be doing in the clinic is, how can you get more reviews from your patients? How can you take more, testimonial videos? How can you leverage social media a lot better? So that's where I see there's got to be that marriage between what's happening within the clinic and then what's happening in online and the marketing sphere.
And so when you're working with these practices, would you say that are you working with the clinic owner or are you working with someone that's on their staff that can actually do um, the practical part of posting
Mhm.
and things like that?
Yeah, that really depends on the size of the clinic. So obviously, the smaller clinics, you're a practice owner, you have to wear all the hats. So you're going to be involved in marketing, right? But as you get bigger, you have more providers. You need to have that position within your clinic that is a marketing director, right? And they're the ones that's doing all the internal work to get, again, the results and the testimonials and things that are happening, and make network connections, all kinds of stuff happening there. So we work with clinics everywhere from like a small single location to our largest client is 160 location practice that has a big marketing team, and we help support their marketing team with a lot of the technical aspects of the marketing. So I would say that it's really dependent on the size of the clinic, and where I see clinic owners, they sometimes, and I had it too as a clinic owner, it's like it's making that leap to pay for a position for
Mhm.
marketing within your clinic. And there's a time when it makes sense to really get some help internally. But it is a jump, it is a leap of faith because it's coming out of the bottom line.
Yeah. And how do you help them with, again, when I was in the role of leading a company, you have your marketing expense and you do your marketing things. And at least then, quite frankly, it's really hard to measure how effective that marketing is. So, what kind of analytics do you have, or what do you do to say, this is a good ROI on whatever you're spending? How do you help them make that decision?
That's a great point, Steve. And we call it marketing confusion. So we try to really help clinics with marketing clarity, right? Because if you have information, you can make the right decision. So there's a lot that goes into the data analytics and bringing that in a way that's useful. So there's all kinds of analytics you can bring in from Google, the way that people interact with your website, the way that people are searching your website online, the way that people interact with ads. But what's really critical is being able to see that progression of how people find you, how they are coming in through the website from different ads or different, avenues, and then are they converting into a patient in the clinic. So we do everything from like call tracking to form tracking, and then we even have software where the clinic can click on there and say that this particular patient scheduled an appointment, or even with AI today, we can analyze the call and we know that this person turned into a new patient. So that way, what really matters to the practice owner at the end of the day is like, how many new patients am I getting? What am I spending money on here? Is it making sense for me to keep doing this? Or I'm getting good results over here. Let me strengthen that. Let me put a bit more ad money towards it, for example. So having that kind of data and tracking is really key to making those right decisions when it comes to marketing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, everyone's talking about AI. It's everywhere now. It's, how do I use it? How does it work? So, explain that in a little more detail. How AI, how would you get AI to help you with your marketing plan in a clinic, and how do you think it's different than what you're doing before?
Yeah, so uh, the best way to really leverage AI within your clinic from a marketing perspective is just to help you with your marketing plan and even content. So content outlines, coming up with a plan of things that you can work on for the month. That's where AI can really save a lot of time in figuring out things because a lot of best
Yeah.
practices are already in there. So that's really, really a great way for clinics to start to leverage AI from a marketing
So, in
perspective.
other words, instead of sitting down and spending an hour trying to figure out the best, three-line pitch you've ever done, you have AI do that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. So now, in your business, if I was to hire you and say let's work together, How do I pay you? Do you do a monthly fee? Do you do you sign a contract? I'm just interested on how to engage you and how to know that again, what I'm paying for is a good ROI.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what our goal is to have a long-term relationship with the clinics that we work with, and a lot of our clients have been with us over 5 years, as we've helped
Hmm.
them grow, and that's what fuels us at the end of the day is seeing clinics be successful. So yeah, we have different plans depending on what your objectives are for your practice, and if you know want heavy growth, if you have a lot of established patient lists that you can market to, social media, things like that. We have some different plans that incorporate that. So we have like a monthly retainer that we work with, and different encompassing plans. And then ad spend goes directly to Google so that we just work with our ad specialists on a monthly basis on what you want to really achieve that month. So what we've also been able to do is incorporate another program which has been very successful, and that's helping clinics overcome the recruiting and hiring issues of today. And so a lot of people don't really understand how Google plays a role in recruiting. And there's actually a thing called Google Jobs. So anytime that you search on Google for jobs near me or careers, things of those types of keywords, Google actually switches to Google Jobs. And so what you would normally see in your search, where you're going to see the map and the reviews and all that kind of section, is replaced with job ads. You'll see them from Indeed, ZipRecruiter, things like that. So what we've been able to do is actually um, use the client's website as a recruiting center. And it's a much better experience for people as they maybe come in from an Indeed ad, or we can actually help them rank in Google above Indeed and ZipRecruiter. And so those job posts that are put within the practice's website now are the ones that a person searching in the area for physical therapy jobs near me, you're going to pop up near the top. And so now you can come actually into the client's website instead of going into Indeed. And it's a much better experience because you can have video and visuals and just tell the culture of the clinic, and it really just brings in a lot better quality applicant. So that's how we've
Yeah.
been able to incorporate that into our programs too.
Well, obviously that's something PTs would really like to hone in on because that's obviously an issue when trying to hire people. I'm wondering if you know from those analytics and you know from your experience, as an executive coach, working with higher level executives, what I know from those I work with will tell you that, you know, probably 80 or 85% of the really good jobs that you want as an executive level. You don't get off Indeed. You don't get from a resume. It's from referrals or somebody I know. And hey, I know this person's looking for this high level executive. So here's somebody you might be interested in, so on. Where does the PT job market rank in that? Are they still finding people through the old traditional way of resumes and things like that, or is it similar that you're doing it through referrals and people you know type of thing?
I think it's a mix. It's become more prevalent today where there is more of who you know and who you can refer in. Um, the in we have varying we as we survey different clients, there's varying success to Indeed. It tends to be on the low side when it comes to clinicians. For office managers, admin jobs, stuff like that, I think it's still a good area. But when it comes to clinicians and higher execs in the organization, uh, it's a multi-pronged attach. It's like who you know, but then they're going to do their due diligence on you. They're going to check you out. And so the more of the story that you can paint, especially from an online perspective, like how are your Indeed profiles with reviews from your employees, right? How are your profiles on your website with, from your testimonials from employees? Do you do a lot of great things in your culture and you take a lot of pictures and videos and tell that story? So they're going to do a lot more due diligence before they ever reach out to you. And so that's what we have really tried to approach from the hiring side, is how can we tell more of that clinic story to potential employees out there.
So you actually help your clients with that, then you
Mhm.
creating the story by pictures and testimonials and things
Right.
on your website and things like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
And what about LinkedIn? Do you work with LinkedIn in that sense? Because that doesn't go necessarily to the direct public, but how does LinkedIn fit into the strategy?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, this is something pretty new that we've been putting together since the last couple quarters here, and it's going very well because we just saw that need happening. So we haven't even really investigated much of LinkedIn as far as advertising. The advertising on LinkedIn is more expensive, so that's where cost comes into play in terms of how a practice, how much are they willing to spend on getting a new clinician in. If they can do it for cheaper, say through Google or Google Ads, that could be better, right? But I think, if you're trying to, especially the bigger clinics that you are, the more you have to cast a wider net. So yeah, you have to be using LinkedIn, you have to be using, Google for Jobs, Indeed. But I think LinkedIn does have promise. It really depends on your area because I would say like in more urban areas, you would have clinicians that are more used to being on LinkedIn or having an updated LinkedIn profile, receiving emails from LinkedIn. That's the key. And then maybe in more rural areas, they're not using LinkedIn that much. So that might be a harder time to acquire people through LinkedIn.
A question I always get to, and I remember as CEO of a company, we used to talk about this all the time. Do you have any idea when you counsel companies or practices, like what's the percentage of your expenses that you should put towards marketing?
Mhm.
And I've heard such varying ranges. It's hard to know. So,
Yeah.
is there a reasonable thing that you can tell somebody that this is how much you should be spending on marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the one thing that I learned a long time ago is that marketing is not an expense. It's an investment because it produces an ROI, right? If you're
Yeah.
paying your rent, that's not really paying, as much of an ROI. You could argue that down the line, but basically marketing, you should view it as an investment. And the key thing is that people will look at marketing as an expense when they don't know if it's working or not. And they think they're just throwing money at the wall. And some weeks they're having new patients, some weeks they're not having new patients, and they get frustrated. So the key thing there is to really have good clarity, good data, good tracking, so you know what is working in your marketing. When it comes to the budget, typically in healthcare, it's anywhere from 5 to 8%. And it depends on your growth goals. So like if you want to grow by 15 or 20%, maybe you're going to be at that 5% mark. But if you want to have substantial growth, well, you've got to increase your throttle, right? And that's what your marketing is. So I would say between 5 and 8%. What I historically see in this particular industry is that we've been so heavy on physician referrals and we've been so heavy on word of mouth referrals that most clinics I see are spending usually 2 or 3%, if that.
Yeah.
Um, but the clinics that we do see have big growth is when they are putting that 5 to 8% in.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting comment that you made there about an investment. It's kind of the old sometimes you have to spend money to make money. So,
Mhm.
but as we also know, in private practice physical therapy clinics, expenses are always increasing, and as we know, reimbursement is flat, if anything, and sometimes going down. So that's always a tough step to take.
Mhm.
So what kind of a if I'm struggling with that decision and I ask you to help me, figure this out, how do you convince me to spend more money in this area?
Yeah, the one thing and this is something I learned during COVID, and I'm a big proponent of and training on this is the business recovery curve. And so that's a well-documented business strategy. It's not my thing. It's just something I learned. But the thing is there when there's an emergency within the business, it could be an something external causing the emergency or just some kind of financial distress, whatever it may be in the business, there's going to be a drop off in revenue, right, or profitability. And so what happens is if the tendency is to cut back on expenses, right, to make it through that tough time. And what happens is that one of the first things on the chopping block is marketing.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely the wrong thing to do, because what happens is when you start to get your act together with it, in COVID situation, it was, hey, the clinic started to open up, started to see patients again. The clinics that kept on marketing during that time had a faster recovery, and the clinics that pulled back heavily on their marketing had a much slower recovery. So it costs you a lot more money in the long run to recover, because you got to kind of spin your marketing back up again. And marketing is not something instantaneous. You don't just like put marketing in and then all of a sudden the next day it works. It has like a flywheel effect, right? It takes some time to spin up and become more and more effective, and you kind of add to it. So um, I would really look at what is your biggest cost in business, and that's usually labor. So if you're having really tough financial times in your practice, you got to really look at, are are all my clinicians full, right? Or do I have people here on the payroll that, we need to kind of lean out during this time? But I would say that the one thing you don't want to really do during a bad time is to lean out on your marketing, because you basically choke the engine. um, and it's hard to really get forward movement after that.
Yeah, it's common to for leaders to not embrace, it's kind of like you have short-term deprivation, so to speak, for long-term gain. But that's a tough sell. So let's say that you've got a new client, and what's your tried and true that if I really want to say, look how this works, what do you know that you can do right away that they're going to say, oh my gosh, that really worked? Is there something that you can do? I realize you have to have a wide berth and an integrated approach, but is there
Mhm.
something that you can do right out of the gates that you can say, I know this will work?
Yeah, what I find is that a lot of clinics don't do enough marketing to their patient list, and they're sitting on a gold mine right there. I mean, the people that know you and like you the most are the people that you've already seen. And we all have those patients that are thanking us as they leave the door, and they're thrilled, but they're busy. They're busy in their own world. And if you don't stay in good communication with them, they may have something else pop up that they need help with, and they're not really thinking about you. Or, it's been a couple years and they start to, look around and they might not find you again. So the key thing there that can happen quickly is start marketing to your past patients. Email marketing campaigns, those are very quick to get out there. So if whether you start working with us, or if you're again trying to flip things around in your business, really start there. Start with your patient list and see how fast can I, get some good action emails out to them.
Well, PTs, I know PTs. Anything that has the word sales in it freaks them out usually. And so that's an interesting thing that you brought that up. But I would assume the pushback is going to be, well, I don't want to bug them.
Mhm.
I don't want to, I've got their email address, and am I abusing that by sending them things and bugging them, so to speak? And does that, there's a fear that actually you might turn away some people. Is that just a total wrong way to look at it?
It is a wrong way to look at it, and it's a fear, right? And
Yeah.
the way that you should approach it is, how helpful can you be? And you just want to start putting out useful tips, ideas, exercises, blogs, all kinds of things that you have your knowledge, you have your expertise that people want to know about. And so how can you share that? And email is a great way. So a lot of times we'll put together blogs on a website that's super simple to do, and you're given an exercise tip or a way to kind of overcome something. You can get that out in an email, like, hey, just thought this would be helpful to you if anybody that's having this kind of problem. Share this information with them. So you can make it very informational, helpful, and it's not salesy, right? You're not
Okay.
asking
Yeah.
for the sale. And a lot of times too, just a simple, very simple email of, how are you doing? Haven't heard from you. How are things? Right? And you get a response back. Oh yeah, my knee's been bothering me again. Oh, well, let's chat. Well, call me up. So that can get a lot of people coming back in very quickly if you just ask how they're doing.
So when you have, say, content in those, or a blog, let's say through the blog, that takes some time to put together. That takes some time to
Mhm.
create something that's going to hit, effectively, and so on. So Is that something that you do as a company? You help them create those, or are you just advising people this is what you need to do?
No, we actually help them with that because again, they're busy operating a clinic. So we'll come up with a lot of the content for both our newsletters that we do for a practice, which are a bit more of an interactive blog. So they'll bring videos or uh, s- staff testimonials or anything like that. We'll put that into their newsletter. Blogs are a bit more informational in terms of like helpful tips and things like that. So we help them put that together for them.
And are you also helping PTs like just a personal experience, like with larger medical systems now? They have patient portals, and so
Mhm.
you can go in and actually send a message to your provider and usually get it back. Now, I'm not naive enough to think it's always the physician. It might be an assistant or asking more clarifying questions or whatever, but it's a
Mhm.
way to communicate back and forth with your provider. Are you seeing that PTs are more open to that? Are they doing more of that? What's it look like in our profession in that area?
Yeah, I am seeing more of that. There's some, I think when it's incorporated, what I've seen well is when it's incorporated with, say, like a home exercise program system, that there's more back and forth that'll happen between the patient and the PT. I think it does drop off a lot after discharge. So I don't know. I don't really see clinics doing as much check-in with patients after the discharge. And I think that's something we could change a lot in just our attitude, is
Yeah,
that how do we make a patient for life, right?
right,
We should
right.
be their PT for life. And that relationship, that attitude moving into the future is what we really need to do as a profession.
Yeah, and as PTs that are feel like they're always overly busy, that's another fear factor that, well, geez, they're gonna bug me to death. They're gonna be sending me emails all the time. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But from a marketing perspective, I agree with you. I think that if I have my PT for life and I have something come up and I can ask a quick question, that's keeping that contact, keeping that person front of mind, and I think would probably have some benefit. But it does take time on the provider side to answer it and deal with it.
Yeah. One thing that we also try to approach for our clients is profitability, right? And it's if we want to have more of those types of high level services for the patients, like you were talking about with you know with being able to reach them, communicate with them, then you kind of have to shift your model a little bit. And so, how can we work with patients that have better paying insurances? How do we work with patients that even want to pay cash, right? Or add cash value services? And that's where marketing really comes into play too, because people that have that kind of need, right? That they want, and that's a massive growing industry. As if you think about all the health and wellness industry and people paying out of pocket for stuff, people look for the best providers. And so if you can position yourself as one of the best providers in your community, you're going to be able to attract patients with those better paying insurance or patients willing to pay cash services, which allows you to not have to have so many patients in a day, right? If you can have
Yeah.
a better payer mix, if you can have a higher reimbursement per patient, then you don't have to kill yourself with a $50, reimbursement from a low HMO or something like that.
Yeah. I think that we do need to look at different strategies as far as keeping, people in your company and in your clinic happy. And, the old mindset of you just, the more you can have them treat your patients and the more patients they can see and just kind of that grind, I think is the old fallback position all the time. But if you could actually have a work strategy where maybe as a PT, I would take an hour a day or maybe a couple times a week or something where I would actually sit down and do that kind of communication. It's a different experience for the PT. You're doing something differently as opposed to just same old thing over and over and over again, and it,
Mhm.
it might actually help them feel more fulfilled and more optimistic in their job as opposed to just grinding it out. So I think practitioner or practice owners need to kind of think of what other things can I do in different ways that help people from burning out doing the same old thing all the time.
Yeah, that's a great great concept there, and I've seen that too. I've talked with other people about this before, where um, you got to play to what strengths you have with different clinicians. Some clinicians, they're super bubbly. They could be really great on social media. So why don't they help a little bit with creating some posts for you, right? Some content. You got other ones that might be very good organizers. So how could you help in the clinic with something that could, workflows or things like that? Put them on a task force or something, right? So I like that idea of just being able to give them something that's not just purely clinical based 100% of the time, right? And bring
Yeah.
different talents and strengths from each team member into that. One thing we do in our company, which is fun, and a lot of um, our team enjoy this, is we have different like committees. So we have like an AI committee. We have AI ambassadors from each department. So it's not a leader. It could be anyone that's like very good with stuff, and then they meet with everybody else on what they're doing to use AI within their different departments, and they share those ideas. So that's something that our team really enjoys because it's something that's outside of what they're normally doing, and it kind of gives them a little bit of a stretch in their professional growth. We also have a team that does, the lean efficiency concept. So we have same thing like lean ambassadors. So that's something again I think within your clinic you can look for is do you have different things that are needed to get done overall, and you could incorporate some of your clinicians into those things. Maybe it's an hour out of the week or something like that, but it could be well worth it for the retention.
When you look at companies, and you've worked with a lot, so we can probably agree that if you have one or two clinics, you're probably not going to have a marketing director. But as if you're a private practitioner that wants to grow and wants to leverage not leverage the company, but grow the company and get more and more facilities and grow in numbers of facilities and so on, do you have a feel for what how many clinics makes it worth that while? How big do you have to get to justify, or maybe it's time to get that marketing director?
Yeah, and it's not that big of a clinic, believe it or not. Typically, if you're starting to hit 3 to 4 providers, that's a great time to start bringing someone in, especially if you have big growth goals. Because the sooner you can do it, the sooner you can really put fuel on the fire with your marketing area in your practice, and that's going to just allow you to get more patients in. That's going to allow you to obviously hire more people and grow your clinic and add that extra location or whatever it may be. Because as you grow, you become the bottleneck as the practice owner. So if you are trying to handle everything, you become the limiting factor for the growth of the business. And so I've seen clinics that start to incorporate our marketing director, usually around 3 or 4 providers, and maybe start out with someone part-time. That's fine, but boy, do they start to go off with the rocket fuel.
Yeah, and are there fractional marketing companies like let's say I can't really afford maybe somebody full
Yeah,
time, but there's a company that maybe I can use somebody 5 or 7 hours a week or something like that.
absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely fractional CMOs and things out there that you can use.
Yeah.
Um, that's a one avenue to look at for sure. Sometimes even it depends on your area too. Like it might, I do like having someone within the clinic because it can take a lot off of the clinic owner as far as getting stuff from within the clinic. And your
Right.
greatest asset really is all the wonderful stories that are happening every single day with patient care. And so, the goal of marketing is to take those stories and tell them to the world. So if you have someone internal that can help with that, even if, to start out with, it's a tech who's really good with that kind of stuff, getting someone to just collect things and be in charge of that can take a load off your shoulders as a practice
Well,
owner.
that was kind of my next question because, again, what has your experience been? Because there's if you're going to have somebody do that, the tendency would be to have somebody on the lower end of the payroll scale, as far as to do it, because you don't want to take a PT out of patient care.
Right.
Yet the content may require, a PT input, and I know a lot of companies, use PTs to do this. So, what has your experience been? Is the PT the better choice? Is it better to have somebody that maybe has more tech savvy? As coming from an aide or an assistive person, who's the best person to internally do that kind of thing you just talked about?
Yeah, so if you're a growing clinic and let's say, let's say you're 4+ providers, I would say that you want to find someone to fill that marketing director role. And they're going to be you want to find someone, and where people, again, this people make mistakes here because they try to find someone who's going to be good at social media.
Yeah.
And you get someone who just likes to sit and post and do content all day. That's not what you need in that position. What you need, someone who's very good at project management, someone who's very good strategist, right? So if you have someone who's excellent at coordinating a lot of different things, that's going to be a very successful marketing director, right?
Yeah.
And what they could do then is they can leverage the different clinicians within the practice to help them out with certain projects that are going on. So
Yeah.
that way, the PTs are involved. They might give their, you know, you know, helping tell a story or giving some advice on something that they put into an article. So that way, it's a lower cost than a clinician, and but you can still have a decent enough salary range where it's someone who's going to be very good with project management and strategy.
Yeah, well, what you described there is a perfect example of you need a leader, you don't need a taskmaster.
Yeah.
Because a good leader is going to be able to convince the PTs to give their time or to give the content or do whatever, and then you have a strategy going forward where you're not just clicking things off the box that I did this, I did that, I did this. It's more of a strategy of how we can do it. So, whether it's a tech or a lower level payroll person, you still need somebody who has some leadership skills to
Mhm.
pull it all together.
That's right.
Yeah. So, you've been at this for a while now, and is your company itself growing? Do you feel like there's more and more need and more interest to get services like yours?
Yeah, definitely. I've been growing every year, and it's exciting to be part of that. I love it that in our industry, I am seeing a bigger and bigger shift to direct to consumer marketing. So there is more of that demand for digital marketing, and it's becoming much more of an understanding and awareness and a need within the clinic to fuel, obviously, the marketing. And in today's world, it's more competitive, right? So there's a more competitive market for the clinics out there. How can they stand out against the bigger networks, the bigger hospital groups as an independent practice? And so the nice thing with that is, from the digital playing field, you can actually perform up there with the big boys if you're doing it right. So I'm just seeing more awareness for that in the market.
Are there different regions in the country that embrace this more than others? I mean, do you have clients all across the nation, or are there pockets of intensity as far as where your clients are?
Yeah, we have clients in pretty much all 50 states and almost all provinces in Canada. We have some clients that are uh, kind of way out there in the Canadian wilderness, and they bring people in from many miles away for care. That's different. The clinics, it's pockets too, right? Because obviously big cities and big areas like the Northeast obviously is a very heavy area. And if you look at North America at night, you'll just see all the lights on the East
Yeah.
Coast and compared to some on the West Coast there, and it's kind of a little dark in the middle, right? So very much the same for the amount of clinics that we work with.
Do you see any differences between your Canadian clients and your American clients as far as the way they look at things and the way that they,
Definitely.
yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah. So it's it's funny because especially today we're talking about all the kind of competitiveness and upset that's happened between Canada and the US. But I would say
Yeah.
that in Canada, they've been ahead of us in terms of direct to consumer marketing because they've been at that. They didn't have as much of the physician referrals as we did here in the States, and obviously the insurance setup is very different. And in Canada, people are also much more used to paying out of pocket and going for services. And so what I see in Canada is that there is a lot more interdisciplinary clinics, meaning that there's not just physio, there's also usually chiropractic and acupuncture and massage and other services that are blended into that practice. And I think it's really great. And actually, the clinics that I see adopt that here in the US are being very successful too. So, as we need to evolve and adapt in this marketplace, I think if you're just doing PT, you could be doing so much more if you brought in additional lines of revenue and additional services into your practice. And what we see from the marketplace is that I think patients really enjoy more of a one-stop shop versus having to think about, I'm going to PT here, maybe I need to go to massage over here. I was thinking maybe considering even acupuncture, I'm going to go over there. What if that was all under one roof?
Hmm. Yeah. Now, is your wife still in your business today, helping you build this
She
business?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does. She does a lot with keeping the team rocking and rolling together, and she kind
Mhm.
of helps on that side of things.
And how big is the team? How many employees do you have in your company?
I think we're about 78
Uh,
employees.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's pretty big. You
yeah.
got a big payroll too.
We do have a big payroll for sure, but it's
Yeah.
well worth it, and we've got a great team, lots of different specialists in all different areas.
Now, we didn't talk about it, but you also have a podcast that you do as well, right?
Yeah, I have our
Yeah.
practice marketing podcast. So we love bringing on different, leaders in the industry to talk about what can help level up clinics from all different aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. How long you been doing that part of it?
I've been doing that for probably about a year and a half now, I think. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, Neil, is there anything in anticipation of our discussion today that I haven't asked you that you want to be sure and get in the program?
No, I think we've covered a lot of great stuff here and wonderful questions, and I hope this was very valuable to your
Yeah,
audience.
absolutely. Well, at this time in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. And that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
I would say, from a leadership perspective, is to let go with supervision. And one thing that's been great for me to get into a position where I am today is I've got phenomenal leaders within our company. We have about 14 leadership team, and it took a while. It took some practice on my side of it, but being able to give them opportunities to make leadership decisions, but with supervision, with reporting up to me, knowing what's happening, I can feel confident in them, the decisions, and I can obviously give 2 cents in where I need to. But that's really helped empower me to really not even be in the day-to-day operations of helping clients. That's really done by the leadership team. So letting go, but with supervision.
And do you do anything for leadership training development for your staff? Is there anything formally that you do to try and help them get to that level so they're more and more comfortable doing that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a leadership model strategy that we work with them on constantly, and then we do monthly trainings with them on different topics, what may come up, in a month, and we have get-togethers, quarterly planning meetings, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, Neil, this has been real informational for me, and I'm sure others are thinking that as well. It's again, it's that area that everybody knows they need, but often isn't embraced. Probably soon enough or often enough, put enough emphasis on it. So I think you found a niche here that probably helps a lot of people. So it's been very interesting, and I appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate you having on here. And yeah, if anybody would like to know more about what we do, we've got a great book out that you can get some tips on how to strategize for marketing in your clinics called just go to market2grow.net. And that's the number two. So market2grow.net.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for your time today. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we'll run into each other down the road one of these days.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Steve.
Take care. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.